everyone, welcome to the program. This is Sunday Politics, live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimale here in Abuja. Tonight we delve into a critical discussion on the national minimum wage, a topic that's dominated headlines and set significant public interest over the last weeks, following several intense weeks of deliberations between the organized labor and the federal government. The nation witnessed a tense period of industrial action that brought many sectors to a standstill. This past weekend, however, marked a turning point as negotiations culminated in the government proposing a new minimum wage of 62,000 naira, while labor representatives stood their grounds firmly on their demand of 250,000 naira. Let me remind you of some of those things that went down and how the meeting ended, of course. Let's start by listening to Labour. The president of TUC spoke after that meeting.
The government side and the organized private sector came up with the sum of 62,000 naira as their recommendation to Mr. President. But from us, from organized labor, we felt that with the hardship in the land, with the difficulty in Nigeria, and with what our members are currently passing through, that the workers deserved a better minimum wage than 62,000 naira. So having looked at all these, we had to calm down. You know, initially we started from 615,000 naira, but we moved close to 150%, precisely about 146% from our initial submission. And today we are making a recommendation of 250,000 naira to Mr. President for onward transmission to the National Assembly. So that is where we are today.
All right, that is the TUC president, but on the side of government, the Minister of Labour and the Governor of Imo State also gave their own views on what they decided on the side of government.
After a very wide consultation and with critical stakeholders, both the organized private sector, the organized labor, and representatives of government, we were able to arrive at a conclusion. First of all, there's a meeting of three parties. And among these three parties, two parties have agreed that 62,000 should be the national minimum wage that will be recommended to the president for further legislative actions to National Assembly when forwarded to them.
That figure had been on like 60,000. Last time, 2 sittings or 3 sittings ago, and then came back and then topped to 62,000, and I said that's a benchmark. Okay, so for them to accept that and to bring that forward, including the organized private sector, for that it's sustainable because they agreed to it.
But in all of the conversation, we'll bring you a view of what could be a complication, because the state government is significant when it comes to national minimum wage. In fact, there are those who say, what is the role of governors when it comes to national minimum wage? Because every state should be allowed to be able to determine their own minimum wage. But in all of the conversation, it's been weeks upon weeks of disagreements, back and forth, working out, which led to the industrial action of Monday, which nearly crippled the economy. But there are those who have inside information as to what really happened, who did what, and how the nation has been able to achieve somewhat this kind of compromise, which we are hoping that it will go to the president, from the president to the National Assembly, before we now have officially, by law, another national minimum wage. But there is a man who headed the tripartite committee. Let me allow you to listen to his views on the process so far.
Caution had been displayed all through, so that a figure that would further throw the country into confusion is not announced. This is because if any party goes into an agreement of a figure that it knows from its sources it cannot afford, then it's going to create another problem. But I thank God that all wisdom came together and that the recommendation to Mr. President is going along the direction that you have just heard from His Excellency, the Governor of Imo State, who played a very critical role in mediating this process.
All right. Amidst all of these developments, the Governors Forum has raised serious concerns about the feasibility of meeting these proposed figures, a warning of potential financial constraints. To unpack the implication of all of these proposals and what they mean for workers and the economy, of course, let me allow you to listen tonight to our conversation with the national chairman of the Social Democratic Party, Alhaji Shehu Gabam, who is live with us here in Abuja. So thanks so much indeed.
Great pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, Sean. Thank you.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? We went to a turbulent past week where Labour went on strike, nearly disrupted all aspects of our lives because they shut down a whole lot of stuff, warning government and telling government of the need for government to stand up and come right and do their roles. But in all of this, what do you make of the conclusion of that negotiation? 62,000 on the side of government and organized private sector, 250,000. That is what the organized labor are saying.
Well, sure, let me thank you once again and to say clearly that part of the tragedy of our country and leaders is lack of sincerity. We are not honest with ourselves. We open so many fronts that we cannot contend. It's the same front we are opening, mentioning about state police, states that cannot pay salaries and other things. This government initiated this crisis by removing the fuel subsidy. And naturally, they don't need to be told that there are consequences that will follow. What we expected is that by the time government made up its mind to remove the fuel subsidy and the pains that will follow thereafter, the consumption rates and the supply rates and the demand rates of the nation, no one can stand it. You are paying civil servants and other private employees just 60,000 naira, 30,000 naira. And then when you go to the market, there is nothing of the lowest that you can get at the cost of 30,000 naira. And in that instance, there is no way the system cannot go on its knees, because it is close to impossible for individuals, workers, private individuals to survive under this kind of environment that had policies that have no human face, have not put a lot of consideration on how to keep the country together. The fragility of our economy, the fragility of the political space is better imagined. So our expectation was that the government must face reality. The subsidy removal, the overtaxation of Nigerians, certainly, they cannot avoid this situation. And the situation is unavoidable. Unless the government accept the fact that what is your own statistics in terms of foodstuff in the market? What is your own statistic in terms of ingredients that family need to cook? You as government officials, how much do you spend in your own house to feed your family and extended family? The SGF of the Federation said that he cannot pay 100,000 to his 4 drivers. That's the Secretary of Government of the Federation. So you can imagine what people go through. And then you have a taxation policy of government that tax virtually everything. And then subsidy was removed about 400%. So for me, it's for the government to accept reality, face reality, deal with these issues quietly, and understand the fact that the purchasing power of an average Nigerian, not just civil servant, is close to impossible. And therefore, agree on a rate that is acceptable to everybody. For me, what I think at this stage, the government should go something above 100,000 naira.
That's what you think?
That's what I think. It's something that you can say is reasonably okay. Yeah. It makes a little bit of sense. People can breathe. People can go to work without thinking of sabotaging the institution.
But it doesn't look like federal government is going to do that, because what they have agreed upon which I'm not sure whether the president will deviate or the National Assembly may deviate, and I don't know whether that consensus is made, because democratically speaking, if votes were being made, you will discover that Labour had the higher figure, but organized private sector and the government, on the other hand, they are in the majority, and they went with 62,000 naira. And there are those who will say, Mr. Gabam, that it's not only the issue of minimum wage, because your minimum wage, you're talking about just the lowest of the lowest person, which are now rare. You talk about consequential adjustment, which means that all through the ladder, if you're going to work at federal service or the state civil service, you're talking about from level 1 to up until the highest level of being the permanent secretary and the rest, that the consequential adjustment is a major issue, if not even the minimum wage.
Well, naturally, as a leader, when you are taking a decision that will affect the life of the people, you must also look at the consequences that they are going to face. If you are buying a fuel in your car, I don't know where you are staying, coming to Abuja, maybe a full tank, an average car can take about 40,000 naira. And if you move around within 5-6 days, the fuel is gone. You're not talking about other basic things that follows. I'm telling you what you need to move around.
So you're saying that removal of fuel subsidy is fundamental, and you blame the government for it?
It is a man-made issue. Since it's a man-made issue, they can adjust it.
How would they adjust it?
It's very simple. Look, it takes a great mind to accept that I have made a mistake. The presidency made a mistake by removing the subsidy without fallback position. So if you adjust this subsidy that you have removed, it's going to affect virtually the entire strata of the country. And virtually everything will be adjusted. But because there's no enforcement on anything, people do what they want, independently, without fear of anything. So the marketplace is open for every kind of people to create confusion, and then innocent people will be victims, because that is what is happening. Who is controlling the market forces? Who is controlling the supply forces? Nobody is controlling it. Nobody is applying any deterrence on it. And therefore, Labour are coming in at a time that the country needs some sort of stability. They need policy stability. They need political environment. They need security environment, to maintain what they have. The is extremely very bad for the government to allow this to continue. The last strike that took place, billions or trillions of naira have gone down, both public and private sector. So how do you continue like that? If the government continues arguing along these lines without facing the reality, dealing with the facts available to them, and knowing fully well that people within the government are getting much, much more higher than regular people who go to work every day in the week, 5 times in a week, from Monday to Friday. Political appointees can skip any other day without going to office. But civil servant, if you skip any day, you are subject to punishment.
Is there something that, because the government had come out to say, we're making some strategic and deliberate move in making the lives of Nigerians better, considering the fact that their lives have been impacted by the removal of subsidy. They will say CNG, provision of CNG-driven vehicles are one way. The president has said, going forward, if you're going to buy any vehicle for government, it has to be CNG vehicle. Those who, they said that in agricultural sector, they've given fertilizers and other things to help farmers for better yield. They'll say that there are other welfare packages they are throwing out. They gave 35,000 naira wage award to workers. Government on their own side will say, yes, they are making some decisions to better the lives of Nigeria. But in your own mind, Alhaji Gabam, is there something that this government is missing that you think that they could be doing to get things better? Since you said they made a mistake, but I imagine that the likes of Peter Obi, the likes of Atiku Abubakar also made the promise that they were going to remove subsidy.
Well, it's not the removal of subsidy that matters. All the 3 factors you mentioned are something that they can manage. In the first place, when the subsidy was removed, the same government, same president make a pronouncement of vehicles that will ease the cost of transportation in Nigeria, not just for civil servants, but the entire Nigerians. That has not been done. It's still perhaps under consideration, or the suppliers are yet to meet up with the demand as expected. Number 2, you mentioned the issue of agriculture. I don't know who have gotten fertilizer free. I'm also a farmer. A bag of a fertilizer is 45,000 right now. So you can imagine an average farmer who have a hectare to farm. Probably he needs 3 bags of fertilizer. 45 times 3. How much will it give you? How can they afford it? Now, apart from other labors associated to farming, if you're hiring agricultural equipments like tractors and what have you, what I did in my farm, I paid 200,000 naira to prepare my own farm, to hire a tractor, 200,000 naira. I'm supposed to buy 50,000 bags of fertilizer. How much is it? 45,000 naira per one. So this is the reality. Government have declared emergency on food security, but they have not made arrangement to complement the declaration. If you have not provided subsidy on fertilizer and tractors and other equipment that are needed to boost the agricultural sector, how will you help the agricultural sector? If people cannot get access to funding in the bank because of the interest rate, how will that help the agricultural sector? If the Minister of Agriculture is not providing seed free for farmers, for better farming session, how do that help boosting the agricultural sector? These are facts that are available, that are on ground. They are not just theory. These are practical facts the government is facing. Now, if all those things have been made, the funds have been made available in the Ministry of Agriculture, we need to know where they have applied. The citizens need to know so that they can rush and go there and get it easy. As it is now, everybody is in the black market, and the government knows that. And the minister can come and verify or say otherwise. That is not correct. Let them say, these are the centers we have for fertilizer at the subsidized rate. These are the centers we have for seeds at the subsidized rate. These are the tractors we have at certain locations at the subsidized rate. These are facts that is associated.
What could answer for the continued hike or increase or the high prices of food products, which is probably a contributor to food inflation that we see? Those who will say, there's food actually, but again, those who are selling are not managing the prices, and it's making it look like that we are in a food crisis situation.
To be honest with you, we are in a food crisis situation. This has been predicted even during Buhari's time, because this insecurity have affected the farming sector greatly. Farmers have developed fear for their lives. Most of them have abandoned their farms, or they found something not much, very little, that they can deal with. There is no security for an average farmer. And then the farmers and the hardest crisis have also greatly affected the production of food and supply chain in Nigeria. Anybody who tell you otherwise is lying. If you give anybody a contract to supply 2 billion naira rice in Nigeria, he cannot source it locally. It's practically impossible. That is the truth about it. And if they are denying, let them provide it where it is. The National Assembly members have been allocated truck of rice to supply to their constituencies. Do they get it? They used to do it in batches because it's not available. Now, there is nothing that stops government from putting a lot of resources in farming. Nothing stops government to go into conjunction with the states to acquire land and farm because of a rainy day like this. So, I'm a farmer. And I farm a lot. And I know what the farmers are facing. The economic situation is bad. It's extremely very bad. And if you have no access to funds to buy basic things you need in your farm, you certainly, source of production will go down.
Alhaji Gaba, what do you think this government should be doing immediately? You've talked about how terrible and how bad things are. But what would you say that they need to start doing now to fix things? We've gone past the 1 year of this government in office.
What I think the government should do, I strongly believe in it. Government must immediately subsidize agricultural equipment. That is first. If they want this farming season to produce a food supply that will meet up with the population that we are producing, government must create an environment for farmers to go and farm and feel secured, and their farm will not be burnt in their stores. So that is number one. Number two, the government must look into the supply chain of the foodstuff. If you are supplying food to the market, the cost of gasoline for vehicles that use gas, not petroleum, you have to pay almost 5 times than the former cost you are paying. Because assuming you are buying a gas to your generator, what you used to buy something of 10,000, it has now gone to 40,000 naira. So bringing the goods from the location to the center is extremely very high. And then people have to engage other services to protect themselves, formally or informal way of securing their environment. So it's a multifaceted challenges they are facing, but they have to deal with the fact, the immediate impacts that affect the farming, that is the subsidy on fertilizer, agricultural equipment. They have to consider reviewing this subsidy. I've mentioned this severally. You can't get it right with the rate of subsidy the way it is going. You can never get it right.
When you say review the subsidy, are you on petrol you mean, right?
On petroleum, on gas. If you remember, Aliko Dangote mentioned to virtually everyone that he is reducing the cost of gas supply. But it has not come into effect. This is about 2 months ago or 3 months ago. Now, the petroleum product, the cost of it per liter is almost 750 naira. How many people can afford it? You know by statistics that a lot of people have kept their cars at home. They cannot drive there anymore because the cost of oiling your car to and fro, if you put 5,000 naira, assuming you live in Kado, bring you to Abu taking you back, the fuel is gone. So you are better off joining public transport.
So when you say review the free subsidy, are you saying they should bring it back? Government should continue to pay subsidy?
400% is extremely very high. When we were paying subsidy, when the fuel price was, the liter was at 160, what we pay subsidy is about 5 to 6 trillion. That's what we pay subsidy as of then. Now, the federal government disputed what the Minister of Finance have said, that they are not paying any subsidy anymore. But it was on the daily talk, this day, that they are still paying subsidy up to 5-point-something trillion. But they need to explain all that. If you say you remove subsidy completely, and then the minister is saying that, no, we are paying. If he was misquoted, fine, he was misquoted. But if you are not paying, assuming, how much do you give to states? Now, this money, that chunk of money that you give to state, what impact is it making in the states? Why do you go into palliative that is not making any difference in the life of Nigerians? Instead of investing that money in farming, in transportation, in creativity, you are giving governors and they are taking away the money. The tragedy is that majority of the problem we are having today largely is from the states. The governors are contributing immensely to the problem. Really? That we're having today. And
I was going to also show you what the Governors Forum said about the minimum wage. And the Governors Forum, which of course is the umbrella body of association for all the governors of the 36 states. And this is what the Governors Forum said. This was on Thursday. And they said, all things considered, this is part of the statement released by the Governors Forum. All things considered, the NGF holds that a 60,000 naira minimum wage proposal is not sustainable and cannot fly. It will simply mean that many states will spend all their federal allocations on just paying salaries with nothing left for development purposes. In fact, a few states will end up borrowing to pay workers every month. We do not think this will be in the collective interest of the country, including workers. The statement released by the Director of Media Affairs and Public Affairs of the Nigerian Governor Forums, Ajay Alema Salihu Ahmed. What do you make of that position? Because this is an official position of the Governors Forum.
I totally disagree with that. Any serious governor that puts his priority right can pay 60,000 naira comfortably. In the civil service structure, both at the national and the states, if you know the number of ghost workers in the states, that directly goes back to certain individuals, you will be shocked and you will be amazed. Any governor that is very thorough with his system and poach the entire ghost workers in the system, and you have effective civil service, is not the size that matters, it's the efficiency that matters. They can pay 60,000 naira comfortably without borrowing. If you look at their security votes, what they do with the security votes, if you look at other projects that they did that is completely insignificant, have not impacted anything on the citizens, what are they doing with the money? Now, the trillions that are being paid to the states, or the billions that are being paid to the states, take the number of civil servants in the states and equate it to the cost of 30,000 naira. How much is it? How much is a PAMSEC in the state being paid? When you get that figure, you know that they are not sincere with it. And we are not sincere about it. We don't want to solve the problem. We want to use it as a tool of distraction. And making it close to impossible for anybody to
All
run.
right, so Alhaji Gabam, there are small states and there are big states in terms of revenue and the monies in their purse. And there are those who believe, yes, there are some states, in fact, some states had actually come to this figure before now to say they've decided, some states have already come up to say this is what they will pay. Lagos muted the idea, Edo said had gone ahead. But there are some states who are smaller, the federal allocation is very minimal. And there are states that have gotten up to 24, 25, 20 billion naira in federal allocation. Exactly. And there are some of them who have gotten about 3 to 4 billion. And they're states in the same state within the 36 states of the Federation. So there are states that have the capacity, there are states who do not have the capacity. Should this state be paying, have the same template of minimum wage, or cut your coat according to your size? Because the standard of living in Lagos, Port Harcourt, and other metropolitan states, you can't compare it to other states that are not as much as big.
But what I think that is rational, you look at the size of your states, and the size of the state determines the number of civil servants in the states. And what are the priority areas? You deal with priorities. You adjust your economic structure, your internally generated revenue. These are the federal monthly allocation you're talking about. You're not talking about also the internally generated revenue. What are they doing with it? So if you have a state, assuming that have about 300 civil servants, 300 times 60,000, you'll get the figure. Now, that's aside. If we want to solve this problem once and for all, we have to amend the Land Use Act. We have to amend the Land Use Act. The protocol associated to Land Use Act must be removed. States must be allowed to generate revenue based on their natural endowments and pay percentage to federal, so that they will have sufficient resources to deal with their peculiarities, deal with their challenges, financial requirements, and so on and so forth.
All right,
these are openings that the federal can sit down and work with the states so that there will be influx into the states and stop producing lazy governance.
Yeah, let's conclude in 30 seconds. My question would be, don't you think there should be state minimum wage and federal minimum wage? Because federal government has its own workers, state has their own workers, so that each state can be able to take its own destiny based on its capacity.
I think the state civil servants are subject to the national union organizations because they need protection.
But the economy of each state is different.
Well, it is different, but then you have right now as it is, even when the salary is as low as 10,000 naira. Some civil servants are being paid 10,000, 20,000 naira. Some states don't pay salaries. It's there, you know it better. You have the statistics. So how do you justify that? They can afford to deal with it. We must be honest with it. We must deal with it holistically. The federal government must admit things are bad. You cannot be taxing people and you expect them not to. I saw one rascally civil servant who said that if you have access to money, you go and steal that money because he cannot feed himself, not to talk of his family. But this is the reality on ground. So the federal government must face that reality, deal with it in the most honest and sincere way. This is my honest advice. The National Chairman of the Social Democratic Party, Alhaji Shehu Gabam, it's always a pleasure having you on the program. Thank you so much indeed for your thoughts. Thank you.
We'll take it.